My computer career actually helped me set up my resume. So with that help, I was able to land a job within the first 4 months of attending school at my computer career.
A few weeks before graduation, though, I landed my first job as a Tier 1 technician with a large insurance company. And 6 months later, I was actually working as a Tier 2 technician with a significant pay raise. And kind of like my first job, they were also very impressed that I had so many certifications.
You have to look at what you want in life and where you're at. For me, my computer career was an easy choice because they offered me a better lifestyle that I really wanted, and it was the only place that would really give me that upper hand in life.
The folks at my computer career are very caring. They really care about our success in the IT industry, not just with certifications, but also with finding a career and really being happy with that choice.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just making sure that we are live on Instagram, and we are. Let me click that really quick. Cool. So we're getting close to the end of the year. It's crazy. Kim, Aaron, you're going to have to remind me how many of these we've done this year or in total. I mean, we've been here almost every Friday, and we're just so grateful whenever you guys show up and participate. So thank you for hanging out with us. It's getting colder. Hearts are getting warmer. Colder in more certain parts of the country. Maybe where you're at, Randy, and not so much here. Still pretty cold, but we're getting there. We're all preparing for some much needed time away for sure. This is my favorite time of the year. Unfortunately, at the same time, which is our discussion point today, a whole bunch of bad guys are also preparing for some next level scams to ruin your holidays. So we wanted to unpack what scams to look for while shopping online, which I don't know about you guys, but I love to shop online. I just got a massive order today of gifts from probably some questionable places for people. But let's talk about how those scams have evolved and ultimately how we can protect ourselves to avoid the Grinch this year, which is very fitting. What was your coffee cup there, Randy?
Oh, yeah. Tea drinker, but it
yeah.
is
Okay. Let's avoid the Grinch this year. And we have the perfect guest and expert in the field joining us to discuss all of this and more. And Randy Rose. Randy, thank you so much for joining us from that super cold place that I was mentioning earlier.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey, Rick, good to see you. Frequent flyer. I know the guitars. Randy's actually going to play us a song after the live. No, I'm just kidding. Wow. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. He's like, maybe.
Don't tempt me.
So you are the VP of Security Operations at the Center for Internet Security. And I'm going to read your bio here. Correct me if I'm wrong on anything. With over 2 decades of leadership experience in cybersecurity, threat intelligence, and strategic operations, Randy serves as Vice President of Security Operations and Intelligence at the Center for Internet Security, CIS. In the role, he leads 5 operational teams focused on protecting critical infrastructure in undeserved communities across the U.S., from proactive red teaming to AI-enriched threat detection, vulnerability management, crisis management, and incident response that feeds large-scale intelligence production. Wow.
Only
That's
one correction.
cool.
It's underserved. Okay. Underserved, not undeserved. They're very, very deserving.
Underserved. Thank you for correcting that. Yeah. That's a lot, though. That's super cool. I'd love to dive into that a little bit if we can.
Sure.
So you're the VP. What exactly does CIS do, and how does your work protect folks like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because CIS is it's really a nonprofit organization. A lot of people are confused as to whether or not we're a private organization, like a commercial organization, and we do work a lot with the government. So some people confuse us occasionally with government organizations. Plus, there are some government organizations that have very similar acronyms to CIS, and they happen to be a partner of ours. So it can be quite confusing, but the easiest way to think of CIS is that we're really 2 organizations in one. What everybody really knows us for is our best practices organization, or best practices part of the organization, which is essentially community sourced from global experts. We work with people around the globe to create cybersecurity best practice guidance in the form of the CIS controls and the CIS benchmarks. And we work with a bunch of commercial vendors to see those benchmarks implemented in cloud environments and other environments so that people can actually operate off of secure technology and prevent a lot of their cyber threats right out of the gate, right? You're building security in from the ground up. And then the second part of organization is we actually run operations for something called the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And that's, we provide operational cybersecurity support in the form of incident response, security operations, cyber threat intelligence for the nation's state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. And that's really the side of the organization that I work on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I read a lot of articles about that too, where we talk about cybersecurity practices, and you can only protect a company so much if you actually train said company and make sure that they understand what they need to do in case an incident arises. Even if you don't work in the IT part of that business, it's super important that everybody knows all the moving pieces. Speaking of articles, you were recently featured in an article about holiday shopping scams, and the numbers are pretty staggering. I'm going to read off some of these here. Americans lost over 16 billion, that's billion with a B, to scams in 2024, and nearly half of online shoppers were targeted during the holidays. Additionally, phishing attacks jumped 327%. For those of you who don't know, phishing is scam emails that people get with, suspicious links in them that unfortunately people can click. They're getting pretty smart. What's driving this increase in holiday season attacks, and why is it such a perfect storm for bad guys?
Well, so those numbers, a lot of the numbers came from, a bunch of different resources that track these kinds of things specifically. And really, if you look at it over time, every year, we see that spike during the holiday season. Mm-hmm. I think it really comes down to two things, which is one, the human psychological factors that ensure that people, us as individuals, are the easiest target for cyber criminal actors. No matter how technical they are, it's always easier to get somebody to click a link or download something they shouldn't than it is to compromise a relatively complex piece of code. So that's number one. And then the second is ultimately that's where all the money is, right? During the holiday season, everybody is shopping. You were just talking about getting a whole bunch of things delivered. You're out there shopping. I'm out there shopping. So we're being a little bit loose with our money around this time of year. So it's a great opportunity for threat actors to take advantage of all of us, right? Yeah. We're out there chasing deals. It's just really a rich environment for a scam. And on the human psychology side, my background really is in cyber threat intelligence. And so when you look at it it's easy to focus on the technology side, but really the human aspect of it is absolutely critical. There's massive overlap between technology and human psychology and the human implementation of technology. And not only on the security side, the focus of my teams, but on the criminal side, right? Fraudsters and con artists and cyber criminals and scammers, they're well versed in the same techniques that take advantage of universal flaws in our reasoning. If anybody in the audience is interested, you can read books by Robert Cialdini, who's a famous professor that talked a lot about influence. He did a ton of research on influence, but you can read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I mean, there's tons of books out there that can really help you dig into the human psychological factors of it. But Cialdini specifically talked about things like scarcity. And this is a thing that scammers take advantage of. So there's this increased pressure on us to buy something when we think there's limited supply. There's a lot of buyers and there's a limited supply, right? The kind of the law of supply and demand. So you'll see scams often will say things like limited run or buy now while supplies last, that kind of stuff. And it puts increased pressure on us, and we're less likely to make a reasonable decision when scammers are taking advantage of those kinds of things. So because we're not really perfectly rational beings, we're more resource rational beings, right? So we're looking at how do we balance the limited resources we have with the maximum benefits that we could reap.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I definitely feel like I have to hop on this opportunity now. And of course, 6 months later, I'll see that it's on sale again. And I'm like, I probably didn't need to rush that. But also Black Friday. I mean, a lot of people are, granted, I don't know if these videos are 100% factual, but they're definitely noticing the Black Friday cards in front of the previous cards, and they're able to see the prices of other stuff on displays. Lift it up and see it was $10 a week ago and now it's $10 on Black Friday. They just rebrand it essentially to make it seem like this is a deal. This is, get this while you can.
Yeah, the other trick they do is and Black Friday falls into this a lot, is the social proof aspect. There's another thing Cialdini talked about, social proof, which is if a lot of people are doing something, we feel pressure to do that same thing. It's the same reason why, you get in an elevator and you turn around and face the front, because that's what other people do. And you don't ever see anybody walk in an elevator and stand like this facing the back wall. If you did, it'd be very awkward, but you would probably, if two people, you got an elevator, two people are facing the back wall, you would probably face the back wall also. So that social proof is powerful. And, we have this pressure to go shopping on Black Friday or to shop at certain retailers because of that social proof aspect. And scammers know this. And so they're building their advertisements and their scams around those same concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. And Derek here in the comments brought up AI, which brings us to our next question. Was one of the biggest changes is how AI is being weaponized by scammers. We like to talk about the benefits of artificial intelligence that we have, but at the same time, again, those bad guys are getting a hold of it. Can you walk us through what AI-powered scams actually look like in 2025 and even going into the new year post-holiday season, and how they're different from what we saw even a year or two ago? How much has it developed since?
The development that we've seen really is more on the use of deepfake technology. So we're starting to see, the use of a lot of voice and video that's untrustworthy. But ultimately, what we were seeing in 2024 and even 2023 with AI and what we're seeing today, a lot of it is really just an evolution of the same thing. And when we say AI, what we're specifically talking about, what's used by a lot of criminal actors and scammers in this case, is generative AI. Mm-hmm. And so what they're doing is they're developing better designed scams, and it could be everything from graphics that they're creating to the language that's used. And this is especially true for non-native English speakers. So, scammers that are coming from foreign countries that don't speak English natively, because Gen AI is ultimately the great equalizer. It means you don't have to be really good at social engineering to create an effective campaign. The generative AI technology will help you do that. You just need to have a good idea, some minor skill in prompt engineering, and you can actually come out with a pretty well designed, well written, and convincing and ultimately effective scam. And obviously we're talking about the scam side of it, but just a tip for folks that are comfortable using generative AI: if you don't speak another language and you're interested in leveraging it, it's a really powerful tool for things like that. You can have conversations with generative AI in your foreign language of choice, and you can create content in that language. And I don't mean just the Spanish and German. I mean pick any language, even in some cases languages that are extremely regional or unique to a small area. And so it's a really useful technology in that sense. And it can be a useful tool in your toolkit, but that's the same kind of thing that scammers are using to go after us here in the US. If you think beyond scammers a little bit, we are seeing trends in AI being used to help in coding, particularly as AI is getting better at coding. But we're seeing it used in coding, code development, code review, a little bit of it in the attack design space, certainly in crafting, phishing emails. And then another use case we're starting to see is actually interpreting the content of compromised data, in particular email chains. So for business email compromise scams, which to explain it really quickly is an attacker gets into it's essentially like a man in the middle. They get into the middle of an email chain, and then they insert themselves in and start acting as one of the people in the chain and convince somebody on the other end to do things like deposit money into this account versus the account that you were going to. So oftentimes they'll use invoice scams and things like that. In order to do that effectively, you have to be able to look like the person you're mirroring. So Gen AI is really helpful in that sense.
Yikes. Yeah, they're getting smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, the deepfake stuff freaks me out, I think, the most, because it's getting very smart. It's very scary. I forgot to mention this before we continue. Aaron is, of course, in the comments, checking out comments, and you guys are welcome to ask our guest Randy here any questions that you guys have. Also, Instagram, we are connected. However, I don't see comments. I see some people said hello. We don't see comments on our StreamYard side of things, so I have to natively kind of go back and forth. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them in, and we'll try and get them answered for you. So, again, thank you guys for being here. Talk about phishing. Now, I've heard of phishing. I've heard of vishing. But this next thing I have here is quishing. Is that
Quishing, yeah.
Okay.
It's a fun word.
That's a new term, yeah, for a lot of people, including myself. What exactly is quishing, and why should shoppers be cautious? And I guess if, for brevity's sake, if you want to quickly explain kind of one of some of those other ones that I said, there's also smishing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
avoid
smishing.
things, y'all.
So smishing is just SMS-based phishing. Quishing is really short for QR code phishing. So the premise is the same as phishing. It's just a different delivery mechanism. Same with smishing, right? The premise is the same. It's just delivered over text message. Quishing is just delivered over QR code. So attackers create QR codes, essentially malicious QR codes, that when somebody a person scans them, it will take that person to either like a fake website, fake login page, of sometimes a malicious downloadable, and that the challenge with these versus a typical phishing email is we have as a community done a pretty good job of teaching people to be skeptical of what they read in their email or what they click on in their email. QR codes, though, are ubiquitous, right? You see them on posters, you see them on advertisements, you see them on restaurant menus.
I was gonna say menus, yeah.
You might see them on the table in the restaurant where you sit on. There isn't even a menu. You have to scan the QR code to get the menu. You get it on your phone.
I hate it.
They're on. Yeah, I'm not a big fan either.
Not a fan of that.
What else? They're on parking meters. They're on packing labels. They're in the corner of the door that you walk in of your favorite local eatery. They're all over the paper towel dispenser at the bar, right there. They're everywhere. So we've really become quite used to them, and people are scanning them all the time. And so we're not really thinking about what could potentially be hidden behind them. And that's really what the value in QR codes is that for the attacker is that they hide the destination, right? So by default, a QR code hides the destination of the location or resource that's hidden behind it. So we can't really see and test that location ahead of time, even if, as an individual, I'm naturally skeptical about scanning those kinds of things. But there's no way I can really test it ahead of time. So I have to scan it and see. And 9 times out of 10, you're doing that from a mobile device, either your phone or an iPad or tablet or something like that, which also tend to have fewer security controls on them. So it's kind of a combination of things. But threat actors know this. They know that the familiarity of them makes us put our guard down, and they're just in a wait and see mode.
Yeah, I've seen definitely parking meter, because I think restaurants, it might be a little tricky. There's a lot of people in there for you to put like a false sticker QR code, but parking meters, it's just out in the open. So they're able to whoever can go over there and just slap on a bunch of stickers, and probably nobody would suspect anything. I mean, put a high-vis jacket on, nobody's probably going to question what you're doing.
I actually saw when I was in Nashville, and I saw, I'm pretty sure it was Nashville, maybe San Francisco also. They're actually like spray painted QR codes on the ground, so on sidewalks, and of course, people scanning them just to see what's up.
Where's this go?
Yeah,
that makes me nervous. Let's bring back cash.
Keep cash under the mattress.
Cash, it's so interesting how a lot of places now I've gotten some weird looks because I've gone into a business and I said, do you guys take cash? And they just kind of look at me and they're like, it's money. But I'm like, post-COVID, I mean, people were not trading cash. So listen, we got to ask.
True.
But yeah, the quishing part of it, yeah, it's a great point. We don't really know what's happening. And there was an article I talked about on our social media recently of typo squatting, which is now a new fun phrase of putting embedded numbers and different letters to make it look like apple.com, but it's actually APP1E, but it looks like an L, or Microsoft has an R and an N for the M, but it looks like it. And so visually, some people might be able to see that ahead of time, but you're right, with a QR code, they're just scanning it. And a lot of times, it's for fun. They're like, oh, I wonder where this takes me. And next thing you know, they're in your bank account.
Well, and typo squatting is another one that we see we see increases of it whenever there's a major world event. So it could be, hurricane rips through, you'll see a bunch of, fake domains pop up that look like anything related to maybe FEMA or American Red Cross or something like that would be involved in hurricane recovery efforts. When things like the FIFA World Cup or the Super Bowl pop up, typo squatting around those things, grows during the holiday season, Christmas related ones, and shopping related ones pop up. So you should still always, be on the lookout for typo squatted domains, because threat actors they're putting them up really quickly, and it's very, very easy to be tricked by them.
Yeah. Even the professionals probably would miss at certain fonts, like a 1 is going to look like an L.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So holiday shoppers, myself included, 55% of holiday shoppers are planning to buy online this year. And to be honest, that feels kind of like a low percentage, but
It does seem a little low.
That seems a little low. Let's talk about the most common threats you're tracking and what are the top scams hitting consumers this season. Some of this we've already kind of talked about, especially with the QR codes. Was there anything else that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I would say probably one of the biggest things that we see around this time of year are the fake delivery notifications, and you might get them over text message, or you might get them over email. The other is, there's fake delivery notifications. There's also package delay notifications. Those always increase around this time of the year. And again, it comes back to what you mentioned earlier, right? You ordered a bunch of stuff. Well, this time of year, we're all ordering a bunch of stuff, and we're ordering it from a bunch of different places, and it's easy to lose track of what we ordered and from whom. And the scammers are they're betting on that, right? They're hoping that you're a little bit discombobulated. So it's important to always double check that it's from a legitimate place that you expected it to come from. The timeline makes sense, that the type of item makes sense, all of that. That said, I mean, the other thing we see is every year, literally year over year, fake ads on social media, deals that seem too good to be true. If it seems too good to be true, it is. Don't fall for it. The one thing I'll mention that I think doesn't get talked about a lot are charity scams.
Ooh.
It is the giving season, and this is the time of year when a lot of charity organizations and nonprofits, they do their annual appeal for donations because people are in the giving mood. So around this time of year, it's the time of year when most people tend to give, and scammers know this, and they want in on people's charitable donations. So please continue to donate, give back to your local community, give to the global community to support the causes that you value. But I recommend using something like Charity Navigator, which is a website you can look for to make sure that your donation is going to a legitimate organization.
Charity Navigator. That's so mean. People are the worst. Yikes. Okay, so let's on that note, let's kind of develop a scenario here. We've talked about obviously being safe out there, even the people who are unsuspecting victims, but also seasoned professionals. Let's say get a text or an email or something saying their package is delayed, and they need to click this link to reschedule their delivery. Walk us through exactly how they should approach that safely. And again, this is for everybody. I know everybody needs to hear this, because you never know when it's going to happen to you.
So, I kind of mentioned it just on the last one, the fake delivery notifications, they're rampant. So, I mean, the first thing to do is just don't click any of it. If it is a legitimate organization, well, first of all, shipping companies will generally only text you if you sign up for text updates. So if you didn't sign up for text updates, or you're not sure if you signed up for text updates, go back into the thing that you ordered and check and see if that setting is enabled. Also look for text updates that come from a 5-digit number, not a phone number. So typically, if you're getting a text update from a phone number with random area code in there that you're not sure of, it's likely not legitimate. Typically, if you get something from like FedEx or DHL, it'll come from their 5-digit SMS number, and then it'll have specific details related to your shipment. Something that's hyper specific to what you ordered. You usually have the company name or the product, or something specific to you in that order. If those things aren't true, it's likely bogus. So the big thing really is just stop, slow down, don't click anything. And if it's coming over your phone, whether you're an Android user or an iPhone user, you should have the ability to report as spam. So when those things come in, if you don't recognize it, you can click the report as spam button. That helps to put some controls in place on the provider side.
Wow, good point. Yeah, 5-digit tech. Okay, yeah. I'm also making notes.
You know what I'm talking about? Like the 5-digit, it'll come in, it'll just be like 5 numbers as opposed to a phone number.
All the time. What was one the other day? My shop verification, it's 22395. But yeah, some of them, they're crazy area codes. My order is ready from Bay's Burgers, 96916. I earned a reward at Bay's Burgers. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even put that together, but yeah, I definitely have a lot of texts in here that are clearly not from, scammers. These are definitely real organizations. Okay. Good to know. So let me pull up my questions here again, make sure because you answered kind of these next couple ones. So I'm going to skip ahead to your day job. So you teach cybersecurity at Siena University and the University of Albany. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's both correct.
Cool. And when you're in the classroom, what's kind of the most important lesson you want students to learn about protecting themselves online? And again, you've kind of covered some of these things.
Yeah.
But is there anything specific to these students?
Well, I'll take it in a different direction, actually. So the classes that I teach, and I moonlight as an adjunct instructor. So this is like a thing I do in addition to my my day job. I actually don't typically teach students how to protect themselves. At least that's not the primary focus of the courses that I teach. I suppose I sprinkle tips in here and there. But I think the thing that I really try to impart on students is that no matter the class, no matter the major, no matter what field you're going into, it's really just to show up and give a crap.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right? There's a saying I like to say to my students and really anyone who will listen, is that there's no traffic jam along the extra mile. Really, history is made up by the people who show up, and there's so much that your listeners have to offer, that my students have to offer, and this entire conversation has been focused on what bad people are doing and scams and criminals. There's so much more good in the world, and we can continue to grow that if people that are getting into this field are really driven by, and really any field, but this field that's focused on protecting people. If we're driven by solving these challenges and stepping up and doing the right thing and doing it with empathy and care, right? So, yeah, I want my students to think about the kind of data they put out about themselves online. Be mindful of social media, be mindful of apps and sites that they interact with, freeze their credit, always check credit card readers for skimmers and stuff like that. I want them to do all that stuff, but really I want them to go out there and make a difference in the world, help their elderly neighbor clear snow out of their driveway, and choose the option to round up their order, that extra 13 cents for hungry kids, or all those kinds of things, right? Eat more vegetables, exercise, make art, play guitar, right? All those things. That's so much more important, right? Return your shopping cart.
Oh my
please,
God.
Right? Just think, if all of us just returned our shopping cart, how much better would the world be? It's more important than anything these scammers are doing.
Accurate. Clearly, I'm proselytizing books all the time here. Read your books, people. I think Aaron threw up this question here. He wanted me to hit it. So you spent over 20 years in cybersecurity, including military service. Also, Victor, I see your comment over on LinkedIn. He says, love that. Just show up and history will be made. Thank you so much. Agreed. Yes. So how is, including military service and work with DISA, how has the threat landscape evolved from when you started to what you're seeing today? And I know we kind of covered that already when you were talking about things that have been kind of evolving, especially with AI, but is there anything else that we didn't touch on that has kind of been evolving?
Really, when I got into the field, the focus was primarily on state, well-resourced, like state-aligned actors, like foreign state actors, Russian intel services and Chinese-aligned, Ministry of State Security actors and things like that. But really, in the last decade, we've seen this incredible sophistication and growth on the cyber criminal side. And so I would argue there are cyber criminal groups out there, especially a lot of the ransomware gangs, that are among the most effective, efficient, and like impactful cyber criminals or cyber actors, cyber threat actors out there. And particularly in ransomware, because we work mostly with state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. The number one headache for our constituency is ransomware, and it evolved from 10 years ago. Really, the first ransomware was in the 80s and it was spread by floppy disk. But 10 years ago, when cryptocurrency really started to take off, almost more like 15 years ago, ransomware was more of like an annoyance. It was kind of disorganized. They went after individual actors. It was relatively low ransoms. To now, it's this very organized, almost business-like,
very meticulous.
and they had these they're very well organized. They have multiple teams. They have HR departments and training and customer service or customer support departments, and they go after specific kinds of organizations. They do big game hunting campaigns. They go after businesses and organizations and agencies that can't afford downtime. They're hitting hospitals, schools, financial institutions, oil pipelines, you name it, security providers, critical infrastructure. So that's changed significantly just in the last few years. And that to me, I think, is probably the most, I mean, to the point that now some of the foreign state actors are actually co-opting criminal organization technology and even the criminals themselves. So to work on their behalf, to work on behalf of the state agencies. So yeah, quite a bit's changed.
Floppy disks. Oh, floppy disks.
Didn't expect to hear floppy disk today, right?
Well, we did. We talked about floppy disks fairly recently, or at least sometime this year, because was it TSA was talking about moving away, or they still use like Windows.
Hey, we're finally going to modernize.
Yeah, and they were like, we need to modernize, but people are like, actually, you're probably better off with the floppy disks. That seems to be the safest.
There's a valid argument to be made there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said hospitals and schools. Windows 95, thank you. That's hysterical. Mentioned hospitals and schools. When I was in college, which was well over 10 years ago now at this point, I received a call from a scammer who knew, it freaked me out. It knew all this information about me. It knew where I went to school, my degree, what classes I took, where I lived, what dorm I was in. And then my parents' home address freaked me out. And at this point, this was a newer thing. And I was at an internship at the time, and all I could do was hand the phone to my supervisor. And I'm like, this person knows almost everything down to my social security number about me. And, she gets on the phone and it hangs up, and I'm like, what do I do? They know so much about me.
Yeah.
And there was a huge, I went to Western Carolina. There was a huge breach in, people's information, but they were able to get so much. And you mentioned hospitals and schools, which kind of leads me into my next question. And I somewhat, joked about this earlier with the QR codes where you scan it and those suddenly in your bank account. But the article that you were mentioning, it mentioned more than a third of American adults have already experienced some form of online shopping scam, or just a shopping scam in general. And thank you, Aaron. That's the link right there. So what are the long-term consequences behind just losing money? Because when you think about it, in the hospitality industry, I mean, they have so much of your information. Schools have so much of your information. So I didn't lose any money, fortunately, but somebody out there knows my social security number, which is super scary. So what are some of those, consequences behind just losing, beyond just losing money?
Well, so you were actually caught up in something I would say is probably a less frequent case, which is that somebody used, that information that was breached from somewhere to, specifically target you with tailored, personalized attacks. Which is quite scary. I mean, we don't see that too often. But also, not to downplay the losing money, to a certain extent, there are a lot of people that just end up losing money. But that's, in small instances, maybe it hurts, for a short period of time, and it can be embarrassing. But at a time right now where a lot of people are struggling to make ends meet, and especially around the holidays, it can actually result in significant amount of stress, which can lead obviously to things like anxiety and depression. And depending on the amount of money, I mean, some people are out so much money that it leads to more drastic responses, unfortunately, like self-harm, and people even harming their families. So it's it's really a dangerous thing. But beyond that, I mean, you're talking about really identity theft, and in those cases, you could have literally years, sometimes decades of damage, impacts that really go further and further, like impacts to your credit score and inability to get a credit card or buy a house or buy a car at a reasonable interest rate. It can create challenges for things that we take advantage of. If your identity is stolen, it can be difficult to register to vote, to get your passport. In some cases, we're seeing that it leads to tax return scams, where people are filing your tax return in your name and getting the money sent to them before you even get a chance to file your own tax return. And that can lead to major challenges. We also see, I know you're probably in the same boat as me. I have accounts all over the place, all sorts of things I signed up for over the years. And many of them I forgot about, but scammers can scan for those kinds of things. If they have compromised one password or some information about you, there's a chance they can get into all these other accounts. So it can continue to persist, for years and years and years. But the other thing too that we don't talk about a lot is the businesses that are impacted. So it's not always just individuals, but the businesses that are impacted often have to make changes to their business model They spend more money on things like fraud prevention, cyber insurance, attack surface management, all these kinds of things that they have to do to help protect not only themselves, but their customer base. And that drives resources away from things like innovation on new products, employee benefits, you name it, right? And it can, ultimately damage not just the individuals, but the businesses and the surrounding economy.
That's a good point. Yeah, there was a article that I highlighted, and I think it's going to come up next week on TikTok or our socials, about a Indiana-based one of those drug companies up there. But they had a breach, and not only did it affect current employers, but actually former employers as well, because all of their information is still within their system as well, which is horrifying to think of.
Well, and depending on the type of attack, I mean, we see ransomware has evolved too from like, being one extortion attempt, which is, pay us to unlock your files, to we're stealing a bunch of data off of your network. So pay us to unlock your files, whether you paid us or not. Now pay us so that we don't release all of this data that we stole, to what we now call triple extortion. So you have extortion and double extortion. And triple extortion is actually going after the individuals that either work for the company, that might be partners with the organization, threatening things like DDoS, threatening to release their personal information to try to really get, more information out of all of them. And it's, these kinds of things can really impact people now at an individual level, even if they themselves were not, originally targeted. Maybe their school district was targeted, or a business that they work at is targeted. And now, because they have a relationship with that organization, now they themselves are being victimized.
It's a scary world out there, folks. Be safe. All right, let's wrap this up. You've hit on a lot of incredible points. And again, thank you so much for your time. This has been really resourceful, especially for myself, especially. I'm part of that 55% that is shopping online. It's not just the holiday season. I predominantly shop online. That's just the whole world now. Support local businesses, but also shop online a lot. Give us your top 3 pieces of advice to stay safe while shopping online. Again, not just holiday season, but through the end of the year and probably for the future as well.
Well, first, I love your, buy local. Doesn't necessarily work for shopping online. Some local places will have online stores, but I do love that idea, small retailers and online. But I would say the first piece of advice is really make sure it's a trusted retailer. So, and it doesn't mean just big box outlets. You can shop at smaller shops. You just have to make sure that they're legitimate businesses. There's a bunch of different ways that you can check that. Looking at things like the Better Business Bureau and whether or not they have, an address in the States or Canada or something like that. But just be sure that they're a legitimate business. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, I would say, always use a credit card or a credit kind of service like Apple Pay or PayPal, something like that, that offers protection and layers between your bank account and a possible attacker. Those organizations, your credit card is like, technically should be insured by the credit card provider. So you want to avoid using like a debit style transaction where you're putting your PIN in, because that bypasses all of that. That's, direct access into your account. So use credit as opposed to debit for these kinds of things to protect yourself. You can also use like one-time credit cards. There's different ways to help protect against those kinds of scams as well. So some credit card companies will offer to, send you temporary credit card numbers or one-time credit card numbers. And then the third thing really is, this is to help defeat the natural human weaknesses that we have, is just to slow down. If we just take a breather and stop and think about things instead of rushing, there's no reason to rush, right? There's all this pressure on us. I lived in Europe for a couple of years, and they're so much better at just like kind of taking it slow, having a leisurely pace. In America, we're all just go all the time, but there's really no need for it, right? So slow down, ensure that you're checking those things, you're thinking before you click. And if you need help doing that, one way that you can ensure that you slow down is create a rule for yourself that you will never click a link in an email or an ad, or click on an ad. If something is appealing that you see, you will go out and go to that site directly and find it on that site, or Google that thing directly that you're interested in instead of going through the ad itself. So that's one way you can kind of force yourself to slow down and not fall victim to a scam ad or what we would call a malvertisement, a malicious advertisement.
Malvertisement. All great information. Again, I'm also going to be learning a thing or two here as well. Make sure I'm staying safe. Thank you so much, Randy, for your time. And yes, we've shared your LinkedIn, we shared your website, the article that we frequently mentioned as well. And thank you guys so much for joining in. We really appreciate your attendance. And if you're watching this after the fact too, if you guys have any questions for us, we still monitor all those comments. So please let us know. Anything else? Did we miss anything?
Well, I'm noticing the link there for CI security. There's only one S, so it's cisecurity.org, not CIS security. It might redirect anyway, but just flagging that.
Perfect. We'll make sure that is. Oh yeah, it was the first one I think you posted, Aaron, was correct. CI security. Cool. Thank you again, guys. And Randy, if you don't mind hanging out here, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream. But perfect. Thank you. And we'll see you guys sometime next week.